One of the advantages to investing in healthcare real estate is it is very expensive for these doctors to move. And so you have a pretty captive tenant. I mean, it doesn't mean that they don't move, but their renewal rate compared to office tenants is significantly higher. And so them just paying down equity and making a mortgage payment for 20 years of their career versus paying rent for 20, 30 years of their career, I mean, they're making money that way. Even if it doesn't appreciate, they're at least building equity, right?
Hey guys, let me tell you about Folio Lands. We landlords fear complaining tenants, fast turnover, bad reviews, and negative ROI. Over the years, I realized it happens because we lack a system. They streamline maintenance and repair requests by inviting our co-investors and repairmen into the app to foster smooth communications between us, the tenants, and the suppliers. Head over to foliolens.com if you hate time-consuming admin tasks like tracking your property revenues, expenses, and due dates. So sign up for their newsletter at foliolens.com and start managing your rental properties from anywhere in the world. Hello and welcome to the Ideal Investor Show. My name is Axel Meyerhofer and we have an awesome guest. Thomas Allen is with us today and he has lots of experience in real estate investing. So just a perfect person to talk with us and to us about real estate. And Thomas started out, if I look at my little notes here, in commercial real estate and property management and so forth. And now has a company called Practice Real Estate. Thomas, welcome to the Ideal Investor Show. Tell us a little bit, how did you end up becoming a CEO?
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for having me. Well, I graduated college actually in 2008 during the great financial crisis. And yeah, it was crazy. And somehow found a job working for a high net worth family out of Dallas, Texas, that owned a significant amount of kind of Class B retail, and they wanted an in-house leasing person. And so that's how I got my start in commercial post college. I actually had my license in college and helped college students find apartments, and that was a great little learning start and made really good money for a college student. But as I was leasing these shopping centers during this huge economic downturn, the only people that were calling our shopping centers, it seemed, were doctors. They were still looking for space, and a lot of times the doctors that were calling didn't have anybody helping them. You saw most retail tenants having an agent or a broker helping them find the spot, negotiate the deal. There was all these doctors calling in with nobody helping them. They had no idea what they were doing. And so as I started thinking about my next career move, I loved commercial real estate. I knew I wanted to stay in it. I decided to transition into trying to work with just doctors to help them make smart real estate decisions as I had seen some of the mistakes that they made. And I found a guy, kind of one person, that was doing that around Dallas and worked for him for a couple years and then left to go out on my own and expand it through the rest of Texas. And so I moved to Houston for a couple years and got it going, and then moved to where I am now in Austin, built a company around it.
Yeah, that's very good. And I mean, Austin is, from what I can tell, an amazing market. So if you don't want to do doctors anymore, you can use car workers and stuff right next to the big new Tesla factory.
Yeah, it's everybody's seeing what's going on in Austin on the news, and I still tell people when I talk to them that the news doesn't do it justice what's happening here. I mean, it's crazy. Every day. It's like, what? I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah, well, it's a good problem to have when there's high demand and massive growth and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So that's really cool. I saw actually one thing that really got the message across to me to say I want to have Thomas on our show. That was on your website, where in one of the testimonials, somebody said, I'm a dentist, I know teeth, but I have no idea about real estate.
Yeah.
So somebody needed to help me with that. And then I guess you did that. That's really good and great. So for our audience, I mean, as I mentioned before we started the recording, one of the goals is always we want to educate the audience. We want to give them additional facets, additional little pieces of wisdom and information that are related to real estate investing. So when you think about somebody you just mentioned, people used to approach you even already in 2008, 9, 10 from the medical profession looking for a space. When you look for a property or for a space, like you mentioned it, what kind of process or what kind of steps are you going to say, okay, what would be a good choice or good opportunity, or what do you try to find for them?
Yeah, so we are experts. So I like to think of it as a narrowing down process, right? It's all right, what kind of doctor are you? Who's your ideal patient? And let's go find the best market that has your patient base in it with the least amount of competition. And that's a simple way of saying it. But we've built some proprietary software in-house and have a team that works with it to create custom reports to find the best areas for all different types of doctors to open practices. And then from there, it's like, okay, we have identified the market. Let's go find the best real estate opportunity for that practice. And a lot of times they're buying a building, they're buying land and building ground up, or they're leasing, right? It just kind of depends on the situation, the size of the practice, meaning how much space they need, the size of the practice. If it's a large group practice that's private equity backed, they're going to make a lot more money opening good new locations than they are owning real estate. So they're more focused on leasing because it's a faster, less capital intensive option. Or if they're a group of 5 or 6 doctors that need a big space for a surgery center, well, owning that real estate is going to be a big focus because that's one of the big unique things about these healthcare users that probably the general public doesn't realize is their fit out, their build out of the interior of a space is a significant investment, especially when you compare it to a regular office space for an attorney or accountant or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you mentioning this. Before we started the show, I mentioned my uncle who is a dentist, and in the pretty early 80s, early 1980s, so like tells you a little bit how old I am.
Yeah.
he, he bought a building, and just the equipment, and you have to keep in mind this is early 80s dollars, right? Not today's
Mhm.
dollars. He spent about $560,000 just on the equipment, and that had nothing to do with the building itself. So
Yep.
I think he put 4 or 5 chairs, but then all this other stuff. But one thing that you mentioned is you do initially an analysis of what is the right market for the doctor or group of doctors. Does that mean that the majority of people that get in touch with you and work with you are just starting their practice? Or what happens if somebody is already practicing and for whatever reason they either want to expand or want to modernize or something? Is that
Yep.
different?
It's a little different. So we get a lot of calls. So we work with a lot of first time startups. Our ideal clients and our best clients are multiple location groups that are adding. We've got groups that have 5 locations. We got a group right now we're working with that we met when they had 1 location. They're at 40 now and they're trying to go to 100 in the next 4 years. But we work on a lot of relocations too, where they either need more space because their practice is growing, or they need to upgrade the space because maybe they bought the practice and they've been in there a few years and it's time to make the investment to move and get some upgraded space. And so that is a little bit of a different conversation. It's a lot around what's your goals in moving this office, and we can map out where their current patients live and or work and figure out maybe we should move to the other side of the highway, or here's kind of our radius that we can look to move. And a lot of times when they're moving. A lot of times the goal is, hey, I want to move out of a lease space and I want to own something because I'm going to practice another 20, 30 years and I want to build the equity. My practice is big enough now. I know what size building or space I'm going to need for the next 20, 30 years. And let's go build a ground up building or buy a building and retrofit it.
Yeah, that's very cool. Now, you said earlier first there's this component of searching, especially for the ones that are just starting out, searching where's the market, where are the patients, basically, regardless of what kind of particulars medical field they're in. When you think about the properties, because I think that would be really interesting and I think educational, and I'm assuming there are also parallels when you actually evaluating properties, what would be some of the things that you look for on behalf of like a dentist or an eye doctor or some, or even a clinical team, from a building or property
Yep.
perspective, not so much from what they do ultimately inside?
The biggest thing is visibility. So if you brought up the dentist, the optometrist, those are more kind of retail driven visibility. And so, yes, a lot of the customer patient decision making nowadays is, all right, who's on my insurance? Now let's get online and look at websites and see what their website looks like, who they are. But they're also more likely to go to you if they're like, oh, I've been seeing that dentist or that optometrist every day as I drive to work. Like, that'd be a convenient place to go. Let me go see if they're on my insurance and what their website looks like and who they are. Versus, we work with a big retina specialty group here in town, and they don't need visibility. They're getting referred to by endocrinologists because a lot of patients with diabetes have to have retina exams twice a year, and they might be doing surgeries at the hospital. So, like, the visibility does nothing for them. And so they're going to go locate closer to the hospital and where their referral sources are. And so that's another thing I kind of missed on is we're also looking at referral sources because, a lot of these practices, it's referral driven. You take an ear, nose, and throat doctor, them being next to a pediatrician in a large family practice is going to drive patient referrals. And once again, they don't care about visibility. Dermatology used to kind of be that way, but now I don't know if you'll notice driving around a lot of markets, dermatologists are moving into retail space and want visibility. They're seeing a lot of value there because all the elective procedures that drives revenue.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the retail spaces, especially malls, have lots of parking and not so
Yeah,
many shops anymore.
yeah,
I
easy
mean,
in and
in
out.
Austin, it's probably a little different because you're town USA kind of, but I've seen in places, I mean, I live in the San Diego area, which is definitely not depressed in any way.
Yeah,
But even here, when we go into our local malls, there are quite a few significant spots, even to the point that in Nordstrom's, they felt that one of them, they have, I think, 6 in the area, and they decided, okay, in this particular mall, we're going to close shop, or did during the pandemic.
wow.
So this is a massive space on 3 levels and so now I'm not saying that would be something that a clinic would go in or something, but still there is a lot of benefits because access is easy, parking is easy, everything is there from tiny single
Hmm.
little units all the way to bigger ones. So I can totally see that. One of the things that is kind of interesting because our customers, when we're talking about, investing in real estate for passive income, have lately started more and more asking, with all this run up in prices, which for those who already own real estate and your doctors who you helped the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years are probably all happy about the equity gain in their properties. But how does that fly in your field? Is there any concern that prices have gone too high and that it's harder to actually make any appreciation happen over time?
Well, no. Well, I've been fortunate to operate. We operate primarily in Texas. We do have some agents in the Northeast, and we have some referral sources that send us clients throughout the country, and the client chooses to work with us due to our healthcare specific nature versus a local agent. But things have only gotten more expensive around here. And could there be concern about appreciation? Yes, but we're seeing lease rates rise. And as you know, in commercial real estate, the value of the property is tied to that lease. And so as long as the lease rates keep increasing and there's not supply, when they go to sell their practice one day, they should be able to get a market rent that causes the building to be worth more than what they paid for it. Now, the other way to look at it is we hit on how expensive it is for these finish outs. That one of the advantages to investing in healthcare real estate is it is very expensive for these doctors to move. And so you have a pretty captive tenant. I mean, it doesn't mean that they don't move, but their renewal rate compared to office tenant is significantly higher, right? And so them just paying down equity and making a mortgage payment for 20 years of their career versus paying rent for 20, 30 years of their career, I mean, they're making money that way. So even if it doesn't appreciate, they're at least building equity, right?
Yeah, totally. That totally makes sense. And I think one of the things, maybe you can touch on that a little bit, because I have one of the questions on our list that I wanted to ask you. But before we go there, when we discuss the passive income investing strategy, then one of the important questions that often comes up is how do I find well performing properties, which is a little bit different than in your medical field because it's more patient oriented, or if you want to call them customer oriented. Whereas somebody who wants to find a 3 bedroom, 2 bath house that generates passive income and performs, right, where you're not paying through the nose and barely make any rent income, there aren't that many locations when, the rising market basically floats all the boats, so to speak. But I think it would be cool if you could say a little bit, if you can. I mean, I know it's pretty crazy to describe, but maybe you can make an effort to describe a little bit how the economic environment in your area has actually evolved, because I think that's a great example of why you don't have to necessarily be concerned with appreciation and market prices and stuff like that. So how is the economic environment been in the last few years and why?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think I can provide a really good example. So I was involved in a project in South Austin, and South Austin demographics are amazing. And in 2014, three corners of the intersection of Mopac and the street Davis were bought by this developer that is now my partner. And we were involved in the lease up and sell up of this project. The first building they did as a condo office building. And these office condos, it was 20,000 square feet. And these office condos were sold for, I believe, $220 a square foot for a shell space, which at the time it was like, I don't know if we can get $220 a square
Yeah,
foot.
right.
And it sold pretty quick. So that's when they went ahead and bought the other corner and felt so confident in the market that they did lease buildings, because you're going to make more money as an investor off a lease building that you then sell up the chain to like a syndicated REIT, the healthcare REIT, which is ultimately who these
Right.
buildings sold to. And I believe the leases in that building were done at $23, $24 a square foot. At the time, a lot of our clients were going into this building, and $23, $24 a foot for a healthcare tenant was a high rent. That's the base rent before paying the triple net operating expenses. Nowadays, we are right now currently building two brand new buildings that are lease buildings, and doctors are, I'm not going to say happily paying, but we are having to get $32 a square foot. And so in a span of 5 years, rent has gone up 50% of kind of what doctors can and will pay to be in a space. So you see
Yeah,
that
that's
much
very,
that
very impressive. Yeah. And can you just say, for a typical doctor's office, I know clinics would be different, but for any kind of typical practitioner office, what kind of a size space are they looking at?
most practices are at least two doctors. They're normally 2,500, 3,000 feet. And so you're
Right. So that's
talking,
basically 10,000 a month, kind of.
yeah, once you put the triple net expenses on it, they're paying about 10 grand a month. And that's what it costs. And then the condo side, because there's a lot of doctors, the other thing is lenders. Doctors don't have a problem getting money from lenders. Their default rate is low and they stay there forever, et cetera. And so there is a premium price on owning, and we are seeing shell office condos around the market in good locations going for $340 a square foot. So once again, another 50% increase in price over the last 5, 6 years. And a lot of that's driven by land and construction and everything else. But there's no way doctors would have paid that or medical groups would have paid that 5 years ago.
Yeah, understood. So one of the questions on our list that you've probably seen is, with all that now that we have kind of like explored a little bit what you're doing, where you're doing it, how you're doing it, what the market is doing, what's your goal? Where do you want to take this going forward?
Yeah, it was a great question. And it made me kind of reflect. I'm not necessarily focused on a number or a thing. I want to keep just growing a company that turns out to be large, where our team and our clients and our investors are happy and we're winning. And if we keep helping people and winning, then we'll keep growing organically, and this will turn out to be an awesome. It already is an awesome company. We've gone from one person to 23 people over the last, I guess, almost 8 years now. And I couldn't be more proud of everybody that works here. And our clients have done great. Our investors in some of the projects where we have raised money have been great. I just want to keep executing.
Yeah, that sounds very good. Now, one thing that I've learned as somebody who has started and finished, so to speak, a couple of businesses, there is this old statement, start with the end in mind. Is there some exit strategy that you can see for your business?
There's always a thought of, there are a few companies that I think would be interested in buying the brokerage side of our business. I've gotten phone calls. And so I look at this company as more of a company. A lot of, I think, real estate brokerages are just a bunch of people that are together, advising the same type of client and kind of sharing expenses. But we're building an actual company with systems and processes and that generates consistent profits, and then isn't, all one agent or broker doing most of the business. And so, yeah, could I see the brokerage business selling one day? Absolutely. But I really am passionate about the investment and ownership side of real estate. And so I'm hoping to just keep growing that brokerage business to create investment opportunities for our agents, brokers, customers, etc.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds very good. In that context, since you used the word investing a couple of times, do you see or foresee sometime in the future that regular people could invest in those properties? Or do you think doctors, because of their easy access to funds, would predominantly rather own themselves?
So that's frankly the battle we fight is we're trying to create these cash flowing assets. We've come up with a great method where a lot of doctors, like I kind of hit on earlier, maybe they're expanding to multiple locations and they don't want to use their equity to go buy buildings. And so we create a limited partnership, right? In a section of that partnership, the doctors that are in the building can invest in it. That's what we're doing on these two projects. But yeah, we're also raising outside capital from typically kind of high net worth, not super high net worth, but 50,000 minimum investment. So like one building we're about to buy is $1 million equity injection. And the doctors will probably be about 200,000 or 300,000 of it, and then we'll raise the other 700. Me and a couple of the partners will put in obviously some equity as well, but we're going to raise it from some outside sources.
And that would
Um,
then work, if I understand it right, kind of like a syndication deal?
yeah, it's a syndication deal. I mean, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and for anybody who is not totally clear on what a syndication deal is, I can plug a little bit our YouTube channel. If you look there, there's a series called Terminology Explained, because I'm sure, Thomas, you will agree, there's a ton of terms in the field of real estate. And I'm not claiming that we have covered all of them by no means, but I know for a fact that syndication, we have looked once or twice. So anybody who says, not really totally sure what's different to anything else where I can invest in real estate, that would be a good place to go. Now, another thing, I'm always curious when I have somebody who is so successful like you are in the business, if that irresistible offer came, right, Thomas, and you would say, well, that is just such a good offer, I can't let it go. What would you do, let's say, after it's all said and done? The millions have come to your bank account. And so, what would Thomas Allen do next, so to speak? Just a little bit daydreaming here.
I'm a I really enjoy working and building things, so I'm sure I'd go find something else to try to build. And I also do enjoy, I love searching for property to invest and buy and put. I'm a deal junkie, so I have a feeling I'd end up staying in medical office space, trying to buy deals, do deals, and then, maybe I'd get into other asset classes, or maybe I'd go buy another business. I really don't know, but I know I wouldn't just sit around. I mean, that's just not how I'm wired.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can tell you from my mentoring practice at Idea Wealth Grower, what we find is that there are a lot of people, and it sounds like you have already found your passion, right? So
Mhm.
I wonder, if I were to ask a little differently, you would probably not necessarily even use the term work, right? Because it's your
Yeah.
occupation, but you're super passionate about it. And that really comes across. Anybody who listens to the two of us, they will hear that how passionate you are about it. But what I'm also finding, and that's kind of why I asked this question a little bit as a hypothetical, is a lot of people have interest that they could have potentially developed into some form of mastery, but they knew when they got out of college or when they got their first job or whatever it is, that that is a passion or something they're really into that isn't really a moneymaker. Right, which is
Yeah.
kind of for me the motivation to say, why do I want to help people to generate passive income through real estate investing? Is to enable them to live into that, not having to worry whether that makes money or not. If you like painting or gardening or making music or stuff, and whatever level of mastery you can achieve that satisfies you, that doesn't necessarily need to make money if you have another source, right? So I guess if I interpret Thomas Allen correctly, I would say you would probably still like do the Burr method or do a new syndication for something different, and you wouldn't just start becoming a painter or a singer or something.
No, 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 I wouldn't. I'm very passionate about golf. I think it teaches a ton of life lessons. I'm an avid golfer, scratch golfer. I'd probably set aside some more time to volunteer with like the first tee and work with children and golf. But aside, that'd be a passion deal. But no, I'd go do some other syndicate. I'd go find something else to do. I'd have
Yeah,
to.
that's very cool. Okay,
Yeah.
well, so two quick last questions that we ask everybody. Is there somebody out there that living or past where you would say, I really admire that person and would love to meet that person. So if so, who is it and what would you want to talk to them?
I didn't see that question on the list, so I didn't prepare it. But one of the people I find most interesting is, and I'm sure a lot of people do, is Teddy Roosevelt. You know, he lived just such a interesting life filled with adventure and did great things. And, you know, we all get a little tired sometimes. I'd love to talk to him about how he kept a passion for life and a motor, for lack of better words, and accomplished so much. And there's so many people that accomplish so much, but
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there were definitely some challenges in his life. It wasn't just a bed of roses either, you know. So,
yeah, yeah.
so yeah, that's a good one. The other one, the question that you saw, and I wonder what you prepared, is we always ask, you know, as the last question or one of the last questions, if you had a time machine, you could go forward or backward, where would you go and why?
Yeah, I was thinking about it and I was like, gosh, people are going to think I'm crazy. I don't think I'd go back that far. I think I'd go back to East Texas in like the 20s through the 50s when the oil boom was happening and like the amount of money and the fortunes that were being made and the characters you'd be dealing with. And I just think it would be because that's, you know, when that oil boom started, that is what has made Texas what it is. And I would have loved to see that world when it was happening.
Okay,
Um,
and would you be like in Star Trek, just an observer, or would you want to get in there
oh,
and
oh, I'd have to be in there. I'd be right in the middle of it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd love to do that, which is ironic that I'm in real estate and I'm in Texas, so I could go get in the oil business. But I just think that time period in Texas would have been a neat one.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. I mean, for me, what triggers a picture that you just drew for me is what would be most interesting is not even so much the oil or the drilling or stuff, but the characters that were involved,
Yeah,
right? The kind of people that it took to go into, like, for the most part, if you're honest, most of Texas is pretty desert-like
yeah,
area, right? And to take that particular area to say, I make my fortune here, which several people really did awesome, right? So
yeah.
yeah, that would be really, really interesting. I can imagine that. Okay, cool. For those, if we are lucky enough to have some doctors on the call that want to see what they could do if they got a taste on medical practices in the Austin or area in Texas. But also for anybody who says, wow, that's an interesting field. Maybe I want to participate in one of those syndications when the next opportunity comes up. How would people get a hold of you?
Yeah, just go to our website. I've got my email on there, and I'm a really good person on email. And you can email me. We can set up a time to chat. We're always looking for opportunities, and I believe in connecting with smart, good people. And so, if somebody wants to reach out, I'd love to take some time to talk.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, it was a great honor that you came on the show, and we really appreciate your wisdom, especially because that's a field that is maybe not that obvious to everybody. So, just to reiterate, the website, and people will see this in the show notes, is practicerealestate.com. And Thomas Allen was our guest today. So, thank you for making the time, Thomas. And anybody who has questions, just go on the website and check out how to get a hold of Thomas.
Thanks, Axel.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Ideal Investor Show. More info and the links we mentioned during the show are in the show notes, or you can go to our website at idealwealthgrower.com and sign up for the Apple Podcast link. And if you like to talk to me, sign up for a strategy call. Hopefully you want to share what you learned with your network and bring more people in. We are really eager to hear your comments. And until next time, be well, stay safe, and ciao.